everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Darian and today is a very exciting video because I am going to be talking about my best books of 2021. So it was really hard to narrow down this list to just 10 books. So before we get into my top 10 books of 2021, I do want to mention some honorable mentions. So let's take a look at the books that I loved so much but just didn't quite make my top 10. What you say? That you only meant well, well of course you did. What you say? That it's all for the best, of course it is. What you say? That you only meant well, well of course you did. What you say? That it's all for the best, of course it is. What you say? That you only meant well, well of course you did. What you say? That it's all for the best, of course it is. What you say? That you only meant well, well of course you did. What you say? That it's all for the best, of course it is. What you say? That you only meant well, well of course you did. What you say? That it's all for the best, of course it is. What a moving tribute. How mighty those books have fallen. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into my favorite books of 2021. I'm so excited to talk about these. So this list, let's take this list with a grain of salt. Trying to rank these was very hard. Like, I'm sure about which books are in my top 5 and I'm sure about which books are in my top 2. Aside from that, these books can kind of switch around really. So I did put them in some sort of order, and that I would say this is my order for right now in this very moment, but yeah, like I said, this is subject to change tomorrow. So the only thing really that's for sure is my top 5 and my top 2, and that's about it. So yeah, so let's just start with number 10. So my number 10 favorite book of the year is Heartstopper Volume 4. Oh my god, and I'm matching? We love that. So this is obviously the 4th volume in the Heartstopper series by Alice Oseman, and this is my favorite volume so far, and I think it is the most well done volume that Alice Oseman has done yet. It is just so beautiful. So this series follows these two boys, Nick and Charlie, and at the beginning of the first volume, Charlie is out and openly gay at his school, but he has gotten some bullying because of that, so he kind of is a bit more private now, and then he meets Nick and they become fast friends, and Charlie starts to develop feelings for Nick, and Nick thinks that he might also be developing feelings for Charlie, but Nick has thought his whole life that he is straight, so he is starting to question his sexuality, and this series is just so beautiful. The exploration of these two's relationship is just it's so beautiful. I love them so much. They have such a healthy relationship, and like their communication is great, and even though they mess up sometimes, like they learn from their mistakes, they talk through it. It's just great, and all the side characters are great obviously, and we see characters from Alice Oseman's other books pop into these books as well. We have Alid from Radio Silence, who is a side character, and I just love this book so much. But this book specifically, it does focus heavily on eating disorders and self-harm. In the 3rd volume, Charlie starts to develop an eating disorder, and in this book it is I would say it's the main focus of this book, and it focuses a lot on not only Charlie and his struggles, but Nick trying to figure out how he can help Charlie, and starting to accept that just because he loves Charlie so much, that alone can't fix like what Charlie is going through, and he learns how he can be supportive during this time. And I think that's such a great conversation to have, because I find oftentimes in media, like love, especially between teenagers, often fixes their mental health problems. Like we could have a teenager who is depressed but then they fall in love and then they're happy, and it just life doesn't work that way. So I think this is just a really important book to have, and obviously the art is beautiful too. Look how cute. I don't want to show spoilers, but it's just beautiful, and this cover is beautiful, and I love it so much. Alice Oseman in my eyes can do no wrong, so this is definitely one of my favorite books of the year. My number 9 favorite book of the year is The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. This book kind of took the world by storm, especially on BookTube and BookTok. Everyone was talking about this book. First I saw Manda from Ginger Snapped Reads read it. She loved it. Kasey then read it, loved it. Lisa read it, loved it. So I was like, okay, I really hope I love this book or I'm gonna have a lot of angry people at me, but thankfully I did love this book just like everyone else. So you're following these two characters, Lena and Aaron Blackford, the man of my dreams. Everyone loves him, obviously, and for good reason. He is very tall and kind of grumpy. That's all you need to know about him, really. And he just loves Lena so much. Oh my god. But anyways, so basically Lena is looking for a date for her sister's wedding back in Spain, where Lena is from. She left Spain to move to, I think it's New York, after a lot of drama happened with her and her family, and she decided to just get away from it all and start a new life in New York. But she is very nervous about seeing her family again, and she's even more nervous about returning without a date because she is worried that this will cause some embarrassment for her for reasons. So Aaron offers up his services to be her date at the wedding, and Lena and Aaron kind of hate each other, but not really, because Aaron does not hate her and Lena doesn't even really hate him, but she thinks that they hate each other anyways. So it's a kind of hate to love romance, but is it really hate to love? I don't know. But it's just, oh my god. Also, it's fake dating because they pretend to be boyfriend girlfriend at the wedding, and first of all, this book is very slow burn. Spoiler alert, they get together at one point, but they don't even get together until like 75% of the way through the book. And I personally love slow burn. I know not everyone does, but I love slow burn. Even though it's so frustrating, it's just so worth it at the end. And I even liked the steamy scenes in this book. Normally I really don't like reading steamy scenes, but in this book, I was like, okay, do what you gotta do. So yeah, this book, it's as good as everyone is saying it is. It just put a huge smile on my face, and this was exactly the kind of book I needed when I read it. So I just loved it so much. So obviously I love all these books, but yes, ugh, it's so good. My next favorite book of the year is another romance. There's actually quite a few romances on this list. I know, shocking, who is she? But my next favorite book is The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. I read all 3 books in, I don't know what the series is called. I think it's just the Kiss Quotient series, but you have the Kiss Quotient, the Bride Test, and the Heart Principle in the series. I read all 3 of them this year, and the third one was definitely my favorite. You're following this woman named Anna, and when she was younger, a video of her playing violin kind of went viral, and she has kind of been hailed as this violin prodigy. And since then, she has developed a lot of anxiety because she feels all this pressure to compose some great piece or top that video of her playing. She is still playing violin, but she has entered this like huge like block. I don't know what it's called for musicians. So the musician equivalent of a writer's block, and she just feels very lost in her life. And then she meets Quan. He was the side character in The Kiss Quotient and The Bride Test, and I was so excited to see his own book because I love Quan so much. He is definitely the best character in all 3 of those books, and he has recently been dealing with some health problems, and oh my god, that was so sad. And he and Anna meet and strike up this relationship, and first of all, their relationship was also very healthy, and I just loved reading about how they dealt with the issues that came up during this book. And also, like, there is the exploration of Anna discovering that she may be autistic and Quan like helping her through that because his own brother is autistic, and Stella, the main character in The Kiss Quotient, is autistic. So he is trying to help Anna through that, but Anna's family is really not supportive, especially her sister. So I will say, like, there are heavy trigger warnings in this book for anxiety, depression, and abuse towards autistic people, because when Anna brings up that she thinks she might be autistic to her sister just completely shuts her down, and that was a really hard scene to read. So if you're sensitive to that, I would definitely be careful going into this book. If you have read the first 2 books in this series, this book in tone, I find is almost nothing like it. The first 2 books are generally very happy, you know, as most romances are. This book had a very dark tone to it. There are a lot of sad things that happen in this book. There is death of a parent, Anna dealing with severe anxiety and depression, and there is one section of this book that was almost like too much for me to read because it just delved so much into Anna's depression. But I thought the way this was written was just so well done, and it was one of the best depictions of depression that I've read before. And I know Helen Huang said that this book was kind of semi-autobiographical for her, and you can definitely tell that this was definitely very personal for her to write. And I just thought it was just such a beautiful story. Like, it still had its cheesy happy moments that most romances have, but I just love romances that also delve into deeper topics too. So I cannot recommend this book enough, as long as you feel like you're okay to read it, because I cannot stress enough how devastating this book can be at times and how depressing it is, and like it's not just another like fluffy romance. So I want to stress that enough, but it's just such a great read and one of my favorite books of the year once again, obviously. So next we have Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. I love this book so much. I read this for the BookTube Showdown video that I did, and thank God to Rachel for recommending this book to me. I mean, I was planning on reading this eventually, but I'm just so glad I read it this year. It was so good. I cannot even stress how good this book is. First of all, it's a very quick read because not only is it short, but it's told in like this interview format. So it is very quick to get through. Also, like the story, you're just gonna want to know what's going on because there are just plot twist after plot twist. I should probably explain what this book is about. So you're following this woman, what's her name? Rose. You're following Rose, and when she was a kid, she stumbled into like this huge hole in the woods, and she discovers this giant metal hand, and nobody knows what it is, where it came from, and then they start to find more of these giant metal body parts throughout the world. And when Rose is older, she is assigned to this case that is trying to like figure out what the heck these things are, and there is a narrator of this book who is like is he in charge of this mission? We don't really know who he is. That's part of the mystery of this book, and he is just interviewing Rose and other people who are working on this mission to find all these body parts and like I said, figure out what they are. And that's all I want to say. There's just so much that happens in this book. Like I would be on the train reading this and like I would have to hold back my facial expressions because the amount of times I gasped reading this, and also the ending was just, oh my god, I'm so excited to continue the series. And oh, it's just so good. Like there's really not much I can say because it's so short and I really don't want to give anything away, but it's just written so well. I love Sylvain Neuvel's writing style. Also, it helps that he's also Quebecois, and there is a Quebecois character in this book, and I like him for the most part. Sometimes I'm like, but for the most part I like him. But yeah, I think it's such a great book, and it's probably my favorite sci-fi I've read. I'm pretty sure it is, unless I'm forgetting something, but another great book, obviously. It's one of my best books of the year. Okay, coming in at number 6, we have Ace, or What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society, and the Meaning of Sex by Angela Chen. This is a nonfiction book about asexuality, and I just absolutely adored this book. It is one of my favorite nonfictions I've ever read. It just delves into what asexuality is and what that could look like for so many different types of people, and I just love how this book was organized. Like Angela Chen really looked at so many different perspectives of people who are asexual, and also like different terms within asexuality, because obviously asexuality can look like so many different things to different people. People can identify as demisexual or graysexual or other terms within the asexuality umbrella. She also talked about what asexuality looks like for people of different races, different genders, if people are non-binary, also what different asexual relationships could look like. It just was so not only fascinating, but it's just such a well done book. Like, I know I was reading it and like I don't know what else she could have, I mean there's always more stuff to add I guess, but like it's just perfect. Like there's nothing I would change about it. I just think it's like such a well organized and such a well done book, and I think it's a book that every single person should read, whether you're asexual or not. I thought that maybe like going into this would be geared more towards people who aren't asexual and are just starting to learn more about it, and I find this is just geared towards everybody. Like for me, I learned so much more about asexuality, but it also wasn't like confusing for people who have never even heard of asexuality. Like I think it's just organized, I keep saying this, but I think it was just organized so well and written in a way that no matter how much you already know about asexuality, there's more that you can learn from this book. So I just recommend this book to everyone. I think it's such an important book to read because obviously so many people still don't really know what asexuality is, and it's important for people to know that so that us as asexuals don't feel shamed coming out, because so many people still think that asexuality isn't real. So yeah, I just think this is so important. I tabbed it up a bunch and I can't wait to reread it one day, and this is definitely a book that I'm gonna keep going back to in the future. It's just so good, so highly recommend, obviously. So now we have reached my top 5. I'm so excited about these books. So coming in at number 5 is The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrane. I read this very recently and I absolutely adored this book. In this book, you're following a bachelor type show called Ever After, where instead of the bachelor, you have Prince Charming and all the women are his princesses, and he's trying to find his princess or whatever. and you're following these two characters, Dev and Charlie. Dev is a producer on Ever After, and he is a hopeless romantic and has always believed in the show and believed that these two strangers could fall in love. And Charlie is this season's Prince Charming, and Charlie is extremely anxious and suffers from like severe anxiety and severe panic attacks and also OCD, and he is on the show to kind of regain his reputation because he had founded this very famous tech company when he was younger, but then because of his panic attacks they didn't think that he was fit to run this company anymore. He's kind of trying to like better his public image, so of course going on this reality show is the way to do that. So Charlie goes on the show and it is clear that he does not want to be there. He gets super anxious every single time the cameras roll, so Dev is assigned to be his handler and tries to help him through it and coach him, and they become friends and then maybe something more. Charlie is also exploring his sexuality throughout the book because he's not even sure if he's interested in women, but he's not sure if he's gay either. He thinks he might be asexual, and the discussion of asexuality in this book was just so great to see. And I mean, I don't think this is a spoiler because I don't think sexuality is a spoiler, but by the end of the book, like, Charlie still hasn't decided really what he thinks his sexuality is, and I think that's also really important to see that like sexuality is fluid. Like, just because you decide what your sexuality is at one point in your life doesn't mean that it stays that way for your whole life. And the fact that Charlie is like almost in his 30s and still isn't quite sure, I think that's like totally valid and something that's very important to see. And Dev also suffers from depression, and the way that both anxiety and depression are discussed in this book just meant so much to me. It made me cry on multiple occasions just because I felt so seen reading this book. This book is also incredibly queer. Dev is openly gay. I already mentioned Charlie is definitely not straight. That's for sure. We have a bunch of bisexual characters, a pansexual character, there are a few non-binary characters, there is one confirmed asexual character in this. Like, it's so queer. I love it. I will say, like, it gets pretty intense with the discussions of depression and anxiety in this book, so just be careful of that going in. And there's also a extremely homophobic character in this book, so there are a few moments that were a bit hard to read, so keep those in mind before you go into this. But it was just so good and I love it so much. It means so much to me and I can't wait to reread it, and I highly recommend this book because it's pretty underrated on BookTube and I need more people to read it. Okay, here it goes. Here it is. So yes, love it, obviously. So next at number 4 we have Cry of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I'm still so proud that I read this book this year, but look at it. First of all, she's beautiful. I know the ring light is kind of ruining it, but I also tabbed this book up a bunch. I adore this book so much and I really don't know how to explain what this book is about, so I'm just gonna read you what it says on the inside flap here because it gives a very brief synopsis. So I think that's the best way to go into this because I also I really just don't know how to explain it. So it says, the house of Berethnet has ruled Innis for 1,000 years. Still unwed, Queen Sabran the Ninth must conceive a daughter to protect her realm from destruction, but assassins are getting closer to her door. Eid Durian is an outsider at court. Though she has risen to the position of lady-in-waiting, she is loyal to a hidden society of mages. Eid keeps a watchful eye on Sabran, secretly protecting her with forbidden magic. Across the Dark Sea, Tanae has trained all her life to be a dragon rider, but is forced to make a choice that could see her life unravel. Meanwhile, the divided East and West refuse to parley, and forces of chaos are rising from their sleep. So that's about it. I mean, I will say also that one thing I absolutely loved about this book is you are following Queen Sabran, and this is a queendom, and in order for her family line to be continued, she has to conceive a daughter instead of a son. Like in most fantasies and in fairy tales and stuff, it's always like the king who needs to have a son to continue his line or whatever, royalty, you know what I mean? But I loved that it was so dependent on the females instead of the males. Like, it's just refreshing to see. There are so many badass female characters in this book. Oh my god, I love them all. And obviously there's dragons. Tanae is a dragon rider, like it said. The dark forest that is rising in this book is like a very old, they call it a wyvern, which is basically a dragon. And the world building in this, like, obviously this is intimidating, right? Like, it's ginormous, and also like it just looks like a high fantasy. Like, we all know it is, but it just looks like one of those books that's gonna be super confusing. And like, it took maybe 50 pages for me to like kind of grasp like the world. And even then, like, I mean, I read this a few months ago, so I really can't tell you much about the world building now. But even when I was reading it, like, it's not like I could explain all the lore in this book, but it's still like the world building was just so well done and so easy to understand. Like, while I was reading it, I was never like, okay, wait, I'm like super confused. Like, I was confused about a few little things, but nothing that like hindered my enjoyment of the book at all. I just loved the characters, and I know a lot of people critique this book, especially on its ending and how quick everything kind of wraps up. That really didn't bother me. Like, I thought this book was so much more about the journey getting to the ending instead of like the actual ending. So I just loved reading this and my experience reading it. It is one of my favorite reading experiences of 2021, and I really want to reread this maybe this year. If I have time, we'll see. But I just love it so much, and I'm so glad I read it this year. So obviously one of my favorite books of the year. That's this whole video. Okay, my wrist hurts from holding that book up. So number 3, can we guess what it is? Anybody? Anybody? No? Obviously, it's Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boulley. Oh my god. This is the book that caused me to fall down my stairs. Not really, but I still associate that book with falling down my stairs, but it's fine. So I know a lot of people know like more about this book because it's been pretty popular this past year. When I read it, I really didn't know much, and if you are watching this right now and you don't know a lot about this book, don't look up any other synopsises because, oh, hello snowplow. Okay, bye-bye. Don't look up any other synopsises, whatever, because I think this book is just really best going into it not knowing too much. So you're following this young girl named Donis who is living on her Ojibwe reservation, and Donis is mixed race. I think it was her father who was Ojibwe and her mother who was white, but I could be remembering that wrong. And so she has never been fully accepted in her community because of that. And also I remember there was a lot of scandal revolving around her father. So she has always felt kind of lost because like she feels very connected to her Ojibwe roots, but she doesn't feel welcome in the community. And so she is just trying to figure that out. She's also, I think, a senior in high school, and she really wants to move away to college, but I can't remember, clearly I don't remember this book the best, but I think it's her grandmother or her aunt or her mom. I'm trying to remember, but someone in her family falls ill, and so she decides to stay at home to be with her family. Also, her uncle recently passed away, so her family's just dealing with a lot of things. And there's this boy who has recently moved to town, and they kind of maybe like each other, we don't know. And then something happens that kind of changes the whole trajectory of the book, and it's just wild. And I just loved the journey. Like I said with Priory, I loved the journey of reading this book. I will say there is murder in this book, and there is drug use and drug addiction, so I want you to be prepared for that when you pick this up, because I feel like the way I described it, it kind of sounds like it's like a fluffy book. It's really not. So there is death. I want you to be aware of that. This book it's just so good. Like, I really don't want to say much more than that. I loved the exploration of the Ojibwe culture, and I think it's just such an important book too. And I loved Donis as a character. Like, I didn't always agree with her decisions, but also like if I was in her position, like would I have made better decisions? I don't know. And the ending of this book was just wild. I was so stressed reading it, and I just can't wait. I really want to own a physical copy and reread it and tab it. It's a book that has stuck with me, even though I don't remember, okay, even though I don't remember all the details of this book. That's just me with every book, okay? It's my memory, but this book has stuck with me since I read it, and it was just so intense I fell down the stairs. So I'm just imploring everyone to pick up this book and read it. It's so good. It's so good. Okay, so we're down to the last 2, and I think everyone knows which 2 books I'm about to talk about. The very hard part was deciding which one would be number 1 and number 2, and I did decide. But like I said, these 2 could switch at any moment really, and like they were just so close in my heart. Like the one I chose as number 1, I think I liked maybe like just a tad bit more than the one that's number 2, but these books just mean so much to me. So number 2, we have Beyond the Black Door by A.M. Strickland. I just could not shut up about this book this year. Oh my god, it's so good. So you're following this young girl named Kamai who is a soul walker, which basically means that when other people are asleep, she can travel into their souls and have a look around there. And it is very dangerous to be a soul walker in this world, so her mother has always told her to keep this a secret. In every soul that Kamai has walked into, there has been this mysterious black door there, and her mother has always warned her, never open this black door. But then when her mother tragically passes away, Kamai is kind of left on her own, and she maybe decides one day to open this door, and then things happen from there. And I love this book so much. Not only is it just a great fantasy book, but again, it explores asexuality. Throughout the book, Kasey is starting to wonder if she's asexual, and I don't know if they ever use the word asexual, but it's obvious what they're talking about. And there is one scene in this book that I always go back to where they discuss sexuality and gender, and they like compare it to the moon phases, and that scene was so beautiful. It definitely made me tear up reading that scene. We also have a trans character in this book, and I love him. I loved him so much. Him and Kasey's friendship was just so beautiful, and his development was also just it's such a good book. These characters just mean so much to me. I mean, obviously Kasey means a lot to me, and I just want more people to pick this book up because it is so underrated. I almost never see people talk about it. The only times I see people talk about it are like a few ace booktubers and book reviewers who recommend this book because it has such good ace rep in it. Like, I never see just fantasy lovers recommend this book, so I just I want more people to read it. It's just so good. Like, I know I just keep repeating myself, but it's hard for me to put into words how much this book meant to me when I read it, and this is another book that I really want to reread. I didn't tab it when I read it because I didn't realize what it would mean to me when I read it, so I am just so excited to, first of all, that this book exists, and to reread it and to tab it, and I just love it so much. So just please pick it up. Like, do it for me. Do it for me. If you don't like it, don't tell me, and it's fine. Okay. We have reached my best book of the year. Obviously, if you've watched even one of my videos, you know what this book is, but that book is In the Ravenous Dark by A.M. Strickland. Clearly, A.M. Strickland is a new favorite author for me. I will read anything they write ever. I think they have a new book coming out, probably not till 2023 since this one just came out, but anyways, I just can't wait for all their future releases. But this book, this beautiful, beautiful book right here. I know, again, the ring light not working in my favor, but this book is it's just so good. You're following this character named Rovin, who is a blood mage, and she has always kept the fact that she's a blood mage a secret because in this world, when you are discovered as a blood mage, you are sent to the palace and assigned a guardian who is essentially a ghost that basically just follows you around and is connected to you forever and is there to protect you. But Rovin wants to remain independent, so she keeps her powers to herself until one day she has to save one of her friend's life by using her magic, and so she is discovered, she is brought to the palace, and a lot of things happen from there. This book was just, it just had me by the throat from the very beginning. I love Rovin as a character, and of course, because it's A.M. Strickland, this book is extremely queer. Rovin is pansexual and also enters a polyamorous relationship in this book, which I thought was so beautiful. I think this is the first poly relationship that I've read in a book, and I mean, I'm not poly myself, but I thought it was so well done, and I just love the way that everyone just accepted. Like, no one was like, oh my god, she's sleeping around. Like, I just love how everyone was like, well, yeah, she's in love with both of them, so it makes sense. Like, no one questioned it, which I loved. And we have a lesbian character, we have an ace and non-binary character, Jaffa. I love Jaffa so much. And I'm pretty sure there's other queer characters in here, but I just loved the discussion of queerness in this book, and this book was so heartbreaking at times, and it also made me laugh, and the whole ending was just so much. I remember reading the ending of this book on a live show, and I was just losing my mind a bit because so much happens at the end. Your emotions are just played with, and A.M. Strickland just throws you around, takes your heart, crushes it, puts it back together, crushes it again. It's so good. It's just so good. Again, I find it hard to explain how much this book means to me because there are just no words to express how much I love this book. And the only reason I put this book above Beyond the Black Door is because I believe Beyond the Black Door is A.M. Strickland's debut, so this is obviously their sophomore book. I think their writing got even better in this book, so that's the only reason I choose this over Beyond the Black Door. But it's very hard. They both mean so much to me, and if you're gonna take any recommendations from this video, I highly encourage you to check out A.M. Strickland's books because I find they are very underrated, and I just love their writing. I love the worlds that they build, and like, we need more standalone fantasies, okay? And these are just great. They're just sitting here. Everyone is always asking for more standalone fantasies, and these are just sitting here. So pick them up and read them, and these covers. I just love them. So yeah. Anyways, I went off on a bit of a tangent there, but In the Ravenous Dark, my favorite book of 2021. So there you have it. Those are my favorite books that I read in 2021. Let me know if you've read any of these books, if we share any of the same favorites, or maybe you hated some of these books. I would love to know, and I cannot wait to see what my favorite books of 2022 are. Isn't it weird to think like you haven't even read some of your favorite books yet? It's crazy. Anyways, I'm not gonna have a crisis about that now. But thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon with another video soon. Bye!